No, I don't look a day over 50, but there we go.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, Sir Keir Starmer has signed off his final Prime Minister's questions, saying this is the end of his political journey.
To all those in the gallery and all across the country who struggle to be seen or heard, you're the reason I came into politics. To my wife and children, I love you. Goodbye.
The Prime Minister has also insisted his successor has his wholehearted support. Kemi Badenoch struck a friendlier tone than usual, saying she admired Sir Keir's stance on Ukraine, but joked that they rarely agreed on anything.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to make sure that I got the tone right today. So I looked back at his final questions to Boris Johnson. And luckily for him, I plan to be much gentler than he was that day.
She also called for Andy Burnham to face MP's questions before recess next week. Labour Mayor of the Liverpool City region, Steve Rotherham, has told Tonight with Andrew Marr there are some things Sir Keir should be proud of.
The stuff around taking children out of poverty, I mean, who could really be against kids not being forced into desperate circumstances? The stuff around employment rights, that'll be a really good legacy. There's loads of bits and bobs, but I think it'll be tinged with regret for him that he didn't go more bolder, more quickly.
A man has been arrested on suspicion of sending threatening messages to an MP. Reform UK says an ex-post threatened to shoot Nigel Farage during the local elections earlier this year. Following the suspected murder of Anne Widdecombe, the Reform Party has called for 24/7 protection for all MPs. Attorney General Richard Hermer has exclusively told LBC we need to strike a balance.
Do we want to be a country in which things are so divided, things are so heated, that we have to provide police protection to people who want to be out there expressing their views or representing people? And the answer to these threats is, of course, to deal in the short term with them, but the long-term answer is not security. The long-term answer is about making us a better society.
A 14-year-old boy has been charged over an alleged plan to target two mosques in Sutton in South London. The teenager, who can't be named because of his age, has been accused of offences linked to extreme right-wing terrorism. He was arrested last week and will appear in court tomorrow. Two men who raped a woman on Brighton Beach and a third who filmed it have been jailed for more than 50 years between them. The repeated attacks happened in October last year. The two Egyptian nationals and one Iranian national were all seeking asylum. Some campaigners are warning the latest measure aimed at keeping children safe online won't work. The government's announced a voluntary social media curfew for 16 and 17-year-olds as part of efforts to stop late-night scrolling. Psychotherapist Honey Lancaster-James says it's right we're having these conversations, but she's told LBC it remains to be seen whether the measure will be a success.
Because one of the things, of course, that we know about adolescents is that they are quite naturally and quite rightly pushing boundaries at that age. It's a very natural part of adolescence to push back on any kind of boundaries. And of course, we know as well that they don't have the same level of impulse control at that age as, say, an adult would supposedly have.
And England are an hour away from their attempt to settle an old score as they look to make it into only their second ever World Cup final. Thomas Tuchel says the Three Lions are ready to face an Argentina team fuelled by history. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 13 points at 10,515. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.17. LBC weather, dry tonight for most, though low cloud returns across the east and parts of the Midlands. Patchy cloud in the far southwest, a low of 7. A few showers return in the far southwest tomorrow, otherwise a largely dry and sunny day, a high of 30 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 7 on LBC. I'm Iain Dale. Welcome to the show. Now, it's always quite a momentous day when a Prime Minister does their final Prime Minister's questions. I always think it shows Parliament at its best, and I think today's example was absolutely that. If you're the leader of the opposition at that point, it's quite difficult to get the tone right. But I thought Kemi Badenoch absolutely smashed it today. I've only just watched it in the last hour, actually. But it was a really, really impressive performance from her and indeed the Prime Minister, who also got the tone right. He was very self-deprecating. He obviously realises why he's been ejected by his fellow Labour MPs. They sat there in some ways a little shamefacedly because, of course, they keep saying what wonderful achievements they've had. And then you think, well, why have they got rid of the Prime Minister then? There's something that doesn't quite add up there, isn't there? So I want to ask you in this hour, and I mean, let's try and be a little bit kind to Keir Starmer, shall we? Because I think that anybody who takes on that job, particularly in the modern political age, is on a bit of a hiding to nothing, and particularly when you've got the circumstances that Keir Starmer's had over the last couple of years, where he's been buffeted by international affairs in some ways. He's lost support in his own party because of what they think of his wrong reaction to the Israel-Gaza conflict. We've had the war in Iran. The economy has been affected by these things. You can't just blame it all on Rachel Reeves's handling of the economy. But they did come into power promising growth. And they say, well, our growth is higher than anybody else's in the G7. It's still very anemic, though, and people aren't feeling the benefits of any growth. So what do you think Keir Starmer's legacy is? Where would you rank him in the list of prime ministers? Would you put him above Theresa May, for example? Would you put him above Boris Johnson? Would you put him above Jim Callaghan? Where do you think? How do you think historians will write about Keir Starmer's 2 years as Prime Minister? 0345 6060 973. Well, Bethany Dawson is LBC's political correspondent. She's been following the events of the day. Bethany, do you agree with me that was Parliament at its best, and Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer both played blinders?
I was actually really moved by today's PMQs. It was quite emotional, wasn't it? It was. Saying it was really beautiful makes me sound a little bit wet, but it kind of was. I mean, there was this incredibly touching moment where Kemi Badenoch, not someone famed for her sort of softness, paid tribute to Starmer's family. He's known as a family man. He has consistently said how important his family was throughout his tough time in Number 10. They were in the Commons listening to his final PMQ session, and she said thank you to them. And it was just really touching. MPs were welling up. Rachel Reeves was crying.
Oh, no, not again.
But it was an emotion. You kind of can't blame her. It was a really, as we said, it was
everyone knows I'm a bit of a blatter, and I was watching this an hour ago and sort of sitting at my desk hoping you wouldn't notice my eyes moistening.
I didn't want to say anything.
No, because you're
But it had a different tone today. We normally see Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch really just tearing the heads off each other. They do not seem to be two people that like each other. But this was very gentle. It was very nice. It was a very polite closing of a chapter. And in her first remarks to Keir Starmer, the Conservative leader offered some praise to him for how he's handled one particular issue.
There is one thing I did admire. When President Zelensky was attacked in the White House, the Prime Minister showed leadership and invited him to Downing Street. That was the right thing to do. Ukraine is on the front line in the battle for freedom. So does the Prime Minister agree that cross-party support for their cause must endure?
We have stood united on Ukraine in this House. We supported the last government in the approach that they took, and we've taken that approach on. That meeting with President Zelensky, the day after he was evicted from the Oval Office, he left alone. He got a plane. We got him to come to London, and I asked him to come to Downing Street straight away. And I walked out to meet him. I gave him a hug, and then I showed him what was in the street, which was many people who had come thinking that he was visiting Downing Street. And the moment he got out the car and hugged me, they cheered on the top of their voices, the British people, to tell President Zelensky exactly what they thought of him and the way that he had been treated. And that was a really emotional moment because it was the first human contact he had effectively had outside of his immediate team since he left the Oval Office. I had a meeting with him to tell him that in this country we will stand with him and Ukraine, and I didn't let him leave alone. I walked him out to his car because we don't let people in Britain walk out of our buildings alone. We escort them out.
Keir Starmer himself then highlighted some of the campaigners he's met during his time in Downing Street who've had an impact on him, so much that he's invited them to watch today's proceedings from the gallery above the House of Commons.
I'm delighted today that we are joined in the gallery by some of the people I've met across the country in opposition and in power. And these are the people in the gallery today who are in my mind's eye. People like Trevor and Lewis. They worked together at JLR for over 30 years, and I visited them just before we got the deal with America when tariffs were threatened, and I faced the entire workforce that day who were very, very concerned that they were going to lose their jobs because the tariffs would not be possible for JLR. And when we went back, when we got the deal, I took the call from President Trump at JLR in Solihull so that they could hear the deal and they knew exactly what it would mean for them. The only mistake I made was putting it on loudspeaker, which of course is always a slightly unpredictable thing to do when you've got President Trump on the other end. But luckily he agreed the deal and the cheer went out. But these are the people across the galleries who are here with us today that are always in my mind's eye.
And then we've been speaking a lot this evening about the legacy of Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. And this afternoon, our colleague, LBC's political editor Natasha Clark, sat down with Attorney General Lord Richard Hermer, a close friend of Keir Starmer, and he was asked what he thinks Starmer's legacy will be and how he thinks the outgoing Prime Minister is feeling about his time in office.
I know how he should feel, which is immensely proud. Right? He's done not just the last 2 years, but the last 6.5 years. He took over a Labour Party that had just suffered its worst election defeat since 1935. Right? If someone had asked me to bet whether or not Labour would win again at the next election, fortunately I don't bet, but I would have lost the House. I would have been that confident we would had no chance. But he did it. He ridded the party of anti-Semitism. He turned it from a party of protest to a party that is serious about power. And he won a absolutely historic election results. And over the course of the last 2 years, he's done some fantastic things on the domestic front, which I think we are going to be feeling the benefits of for years to come. And he's put this country back centre stage in the international arena, which has been a huge benefit to this country. You can pick any old measurement. The one I like to talk about often is trade, because it has a real difference to people's lives, in their pounds in their pockets, or how good their jobs are going to be if they have jobs, making jobs better and more worthwhile. That's going to be helped by trade deals. The India one comes into force today, by the way. And we're able to get those deals because Keir's put us back centre stage, and I'm sure Andy's going to carry on.
I think with this really touching PMQ session that we were talking about, and then the equally touching debate on the Hillsborough law last night, Keir Starmer's legacy is definitely not one that is smooth, that everyone is going to be sort of sunshine and rainbows about when they're talking, but definitely the last sort of 2 days of his administration is certainly going to be one that people at least remember as having a lot of cross-party collaboration and having a focus on essentially real people and campaigners for things that have hurt some of the most vulnerable people in society.
Bethany, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Right, well, let's talk to Pooja Kanda. She's the mother of Ronan Kanda, who was murdered with a ninja sword, which was bought online in June 2022, prompting Keir Starmer's government to introduce a new law which bans their manufacture, supply, sale and possession. Pooja, thank you for joining us. Obviously, Keir Starmer has often talked about the tragedy that affected your family. What, from your point of view, how do you see him as a Prime Minister? You were in the gallery this afternoon.
Yes, I was. Firstly, thank you so much for having me today. And absolutely admire our Prime Minister today. I'll be honest. I've done it from the day one before he was a Prime Minister. Our journey started from before he was a Prime Minister, and he gave me his words that after listening to the story of my son, he was really humbled. He was taken back. He was hurt. Actually, I could see that on his face, and he promised that he will burn the ninja sword that was used to take my 16-year-old's life just 2 doors away from our house in a mistaken identity. And that was done by 16-year-old children. So he said he will ban it, and he has kept his promise. I'm really humbled today to hear what he had said at the PMQs, how he said it, me, my son, and our story. And he's an incredible human being.
Because I think his son is roughly the same age as your son. And I think, we've never seen pictures of his children. He's talked about them, but he always refers to my boy rather than my son, which I always think is slightly odd, but he clearly is a family man. And so you think he's delivered on his promise to you, and that will form part of his legacy.
Absolutely. That is his legacy. That is what he promised, and he kept his words to this mom. And it's not for me, by the way. It is for his country, for this country. And there will be lives saved, many lives, because Ronan's law is not just banning of a ninja sword. There's much more to it.
Yeah.
And all them things are going to count in bring the knife crime down.
Obviously on days like today, it brings it all back, brings back all those painful memories for you. But you're looking at me with a smile on your face. You're incredibly dignified in the way. I know you've talked about this quite a lot, and obviously you want to keep the memory of your son very much in your mind. But how much sort of all this time on from the horrible incident, how often does it sort of just suddenly cross your mind? And you obviously want to remember your son not just for the way that he died, but for the way that he lived his life.
My son is larger than life. I have never let him go for 1 second. Even this smile is because of him, because I think of Ronan and I smile. I feel absolutely honored to be his mother. That's how much he's given me in 16 and a half years. I don't know what I've given him, but what he's given me is a reason I stand in front of you today, is a reason that Ronan's law is saving the country. Ronan is a legacy itself, because he was my only son, and he is proud to be around. Honestly, it was a wonderful son.
Well, Pooja, it's an honour to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us. That's Pooja Kanda there. Sorry, I guess the last few days, given what has happened to a friend of mine, and you know who I'm talking about, sort of brings that to the fore, doesn't it? Right, let's go to a break and I'll compose myself. It's 18 minutes past 7.
This is LBC.
Get unlimited video calls with vets from First Vet with Pets in a Pickle. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, visit petsinapickle.co.uk.
Want a simple way to earn a fixed monthly income? At ULEZ Prosperity, you buy a ULEZ compliant vehicle from us, rent it back to us for a fixed monthly income, and at the end of the term, we buy it back from you at a fixed agreed price. We manage the vehicle, driver and operations. You simply receive the monthly income. Buy, rent, sell. It's that simple. Get conditions at ulezprosperity.com. Earn a steady monthly income at ulezprosperity.com.
This is the life. Sipping a glass of Chardonnay without a care in the world. La vie est belle, non?
John, for the 5th time, please stop doing the voice. We're in Sussex.
Visit a vineyard by train and save a third with Group Save on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
When you're watching the match in bed. When you're streaming a game on your commute. When you just have to catch all the action.
Come on.
Go! Oops, sorry.
Who cares? What's a spilt coffee after a goal like that?
Nothing brings us together like great TV. And a TV licence covers you to watch all TV channels, including live TV on streaming services, so you can cheer along no matter what time you're watching the football. Search TV Licence Together.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
Right, back in the room. It's 7:20 on LBC. We're talking about Keir Starmer's legacy. His final day as Prime Minister will be next Monday. And do you know what? I really hope that if England win tonight, he, as Prime Minister, goes to represent this country at the World Cup final. And what a way to go out. What a way to go out that would be if England won the World Cup. I'm not counting any chickens. The Spanish team is a very, very good team, as we saw last night. So I would love that to happen, because it's a very human thing when any Prime Minister, doesn't matter whether you voted for them, whether you think they've been good or bad, it's a very human thing for a Prime Minister to leave Downing Street. You saw what it meant to Theresa May when she finished. I mean, she was in tears at the end in that final statement she made in Downing Street. And I completely get that. And particularly with Keir Starmer, he didn't want to go. He doesn't feel that he deserves to go. That much is clear. But what is his legacy going to be? 0345 6060 973. John's in Northampton. Hello, John.
Hello, Ian.
Hi.
Happy birthday, first of all.
Thank you very much.
Second of all, I hope you feel better, matey. Excellent. Ian, I was born in Greece. I came here 31 years ago. I've never been unemployed in my life. I only came here for 3 years, but I've been here now 31 years because I've met the woman of my dreams. I've never had in my life only one job. I had 2 jobs at least at every point in my life. I came here in 1995. I remember how the country was in 1995. I was there counting votes at the National Indoor Arena in Birmingham when Tony Blair came into power and the Labour came into power. I remember how Labour left the country in 2010, trying to get a small business loan for my small business, etc., etc. I have never been on benefits. So I've had a good 13 years of Labour back then. I had another 14 years of Conservatives from then until 2024. And of course, we had 2 years now with Keir Starmer. I don't think that in my time in the past 30 years that there has been a worse Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. As an employer, it's more expensive for me to employ people. I have my national insurance contributions have gone up 15% and 15%. So I had to drop down the people that I employ, again, by nearly 15 to 20%. Cost of living is up. Our people claiming benefits is up. Our debt is up 3 trillion. We spend 100 billion pounds every year only on to pay that interest. Our defence is non-existent, while Russians are.
I mean, come on, don't exaggerate. That is not true.
What do you mean? Sorry.
But you just said our defences are non-existent. Not true.
Well, when we have only one ship, look, compared to our power in the 50s and 60s and 80s in the Falklands, it's almost non-existent. I mean, we do have our nuclear arsenal. But my point is, unemployment is up. Please tell me, give me, in contrast, some good news in the past 2 years.
Well, I think, to be fair to Keir Starmer, I think he hasn't been bad at foreign affairs. I could point to 1 or 2 things like the Chagos deal, which I think is an absolute disaster. But generally on foreign affairs, I think he's done a pretty good job. I agree with you on the economy, and he is First Lord of the Treasury after all. On the economy, much less so. And I think that they've suffered because there is not a single person around that cabinet table who's ever run a business or even started a business. So I don't think there's any understanding of what makes an economy tick, and it is small and medium-sized companies that make the economy tick, and they don't understand what needs to be done to encourage small companies to become medium-sized companies and medium-sized companies to become big companies. And if you have no comprehension of that, don't be surprised when economic activity reduces.
Iain, I totally agree with you. But the very simple thing to do, if you have all these problems, the simple thing to do, not to do, is increase your welfare bill. We spend $350 billion a year. We spend more on benefits. And of course, I'm not talking for the people that they need the benefits. Like, I mean, even if you work now, you can't make a living. But it doesn't help when you have 7 million or 5 million economically inactive people between 18 and 65. I mean, that is ridiculous. You don't help as the employers to get those people off the benefits so they can produce. And we have a bit of what we need, a bit of, I'm losing my words here. When we want to increase our economy, we need growth. So tell me something good that he has done towards growth. I mean, on foreign affairs, I totally agree with you. He has helped a lot Ukraine. I'm very happy with that. I don't think he has done a very good job between Israel and Palestine.
To be honest, I'm not sure that there is anything he could have done that anybody would have been satisfied with. I mean, he could have either gone all in on support for Israel, which is sort of what he did at the beginning, but then sort of rode back from that, so he upset everyone there, or he could have gone in on wholly criticising Israel from the start and supporting the Palestinian cause. And of course, because he didn't do that, that I think is in part why some Labour MPs wanted him to go, because it affected their support in their constituencies. But I think it was one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't moments.
Iain, I agree on this point. Okay, let's give him one good point on foreign affairs. Anything else, I think, I'm sorry, a disaster. Simple as that.
Okay, well, you've made your point, John. So you think it was a disaster? Well, look, if you want to ring in and tell me why do you think John is wrong, and actually on the economy, it hasn't been the kind of disaster that John, and to an extent I have already said, be my guest. Let's go to Keith in Horsham. Hello, Keith.
Hello. I think that last speaker is quite right in most things that he says. I wish Keir Starmer was staying, though. I'm very sad to see him go.
Why?
I thought he behaved very well in Parliament today, because I think of all the leaders in the Labour Party, he's probably least worst. I think the whole economic philosophy of the party is wrong. As the last speaker said, there's nothing in there to stimulate growth. I was the managing director of a medium-sized company for 9 years, and then later on I became a management consultant helping the SME sector. So I can understand very clearly what is needed in the SME sector, and what you said earlier on is absolutely correct. And there is nothing in Labour Party policy to do that. And I think Andy Burnham will be worse. Certainly if he brings in people like Miliband, that will make it worse still. I don't want to detract from his performance in Parliament today, because I think it was very good. But I'm really sad to see him go, and I'm worried sick what's going to happen now. I do think there are questions about Keir Starmer's performance prior to becoming the Prime Minister, when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions. He presided over a number of things which I think were wrong, including things like the Post Office scandal. Lucy Letby. Still feel that is wrong. It's not being looked at properly, because people are worried about the blob losing their respect. It is wrong. And the solution is call a general election and let's have a change, and let's have Nigel Farage in and give him a go.
Okay, thank you very much, Keith. Let's take a text here from David, who says, Farage resigns and we get a by-election. Binface may clinch it. The PM resigns and we get an unknown individual running the country with no mandate. The King should dissolve Parliament and call a general election. Well, Andy Burnham is not unknown. He was in the cabinet for, 3 years under Gordon Brown? We know him as the Mayor of Greater Manchester, so he's not an unknown individual. And the king, I mean, we've moved on from the 17th century when the king did have the power to dissolve Parliament. That's not the way the system works now. So I don't think that's actually a very helpful suggestion, if I may say so, David. Let's take this one. It is from Joseph. Let us hope that the history of Keir Starmer in fact recorded by true historians of some intelligence and not the media world of things, including ad hoc comments and disingenuous reports. Well, love to know what those disingenuous reports are. I mean, in my opinion, overall, Keir Starmer has been a incompetent Prime Minister. I believe that he will be seen, if you're going to rank Prime Ministers from 1 to 58, and we're just about to be on our 59th, I think he would come somewhere between 40 and 50. I think somewhere around the Theresa May mark. I don't think that he's as bad as Liz Truss was. I don't believe he's as bad as Anthony Eden was, but it's quite difficult to really think who would be below him apart from them. I mean, there's sort of several from the sort of 18th, 19th centuries that you could put in that bracket. But of modern prime ministers, if we talk about the ones since the Second World War, I think Liz Truss or Anthony Eden joint bottom, Theresa May above them. Then where do we go? I mean, some people would say Boris Johnson around that mark as well. Possibly Jim Callaghan, although Jim Callaghan's having a bit of a rehabilitation at the moment. So anyway, you tell me. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Well, let's take the news headlines at 7:31 with Amelia Cox.
Sir Keir Starmer has promised to give Andy Burnham his wholehearted support as he signed off his final Prime Minister's questions. The PM received a standing ovation from MPs and applause as he left the chamber. A 14-year-old's been charged over an alleged plan to target 2 mosques in Sutton in South London. The teenager, who can't be named because of his age, is due in court tomorrow. And Thomas Tuchel insists he doesn't feel burdened by tonight's World Cup semi-final with Argentina in Atlanta. England are hoping to make it into only their second ever final on Sunday. LBC weather dry tonight for most, though low cloud returns across the east and parts of the Midlands. Patchy cloud in the far southwest, a low of 7 degrees.
This is LBC.
At Waitrose, you know you're a food lover when the delicious 3 for £8 deli spread is what you remember from the garden party rather than why you were having it in the first place. Make it a summer to remember with 3 for £8 on our Moorish deli range, including creamy mozzarella balls with fresh basil pesto and pine nuts, juicy black garlic chorizo with wildflower honey, and aromatic Thai green chicken meatballs. Available now at Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices may vary in Channel Islands, Little Waitrose and partners and concessions.
Take Irish ferries from Dover to Calais, where your pet travels in the pet lounge. You'll be barking not to. Irish ferries. See travel differently.
When it comes to shutters, you need to call in the experts. That's why thousands of happy customers choose Hillary's every year. Every one of our shutters comes with a 10-year guarantee as standard, and our UK-made shutters can be fitted in as little as 3 weeks. And if you find a cheaper quote, we'll match it, because we know you want the wow factor for your windows at the right price. And right now, save up to 50% off selected shutters in our summer sale. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. Conditions apply.
OMG, you guys, this Arabian deep cleansing mud bath is just amazing. I can feel all the toxins draining out of my body.
Babe, you're literally sipping Prosecco right now.
Take the train to a country spa and save a third off group travel on off-peak journeys. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
Iain Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
7:33 on LBC. We'll come back to your calls on Keir Starmer's legacy in a moment. What do you think the best bits of Keir Starmer's legacy will be? But what do you think the worst bits might be? Everyone's going to have a view on this, aren't they? 0345 6060 973. Tomorrow we're going to talk about what lies ahead for Andy Burnham, because of course he becomes Prime Minister on Monday and tomorrow will be my last show before that. So I want to concentrate on the future. But here we're talking about Keir Starmer's legacy for the last 2 years. But first, a man has been arrested in South London over an alleged threat made to Nigel Farage on social media. LBC's political editor Natasha Clark took me through the details.
A man in his 20s has today been arrested for sending threatening communications to the Reform UK leader. The police told us this earlier today. The suspect arrested on Tuesday, and it's over this social media post from May when the man said, "I'm going to shoot you in the head if you win." The Met has said that detectives submitted an application to the social media platform to get the user's information, and they have now made this arrest. He was arrested at an address in South London and has since been bailed pending further inquiries. Mr. Farage said after the news today, "This is the first time the police have ever proactively acted on a social media post, and I hope they are looking at the other 300 or 400 similar posts from this year alone." He says this has been going on for years. Of course, Ian, this has been a huge debate about security, hasn't it? Nigel Farage has been discussing this for weeks. And of course, it comes after the horrific murder of Anne Widdecombe. Police are now saying that could be politically motivated. They're looking at that as one possible line of inquiry. Reform's Zia Youssef said earlier today that if they win the next election, they will provide all MPs with round-the-clock protection.
If Reform win the next general election, as Home Secretary, I will ensure that all members of Parliament, of all parties, are provided with round-the-clock protection. We will also allocate significant new resources to protect former politicians still active in public life. No matter how much I, Nigel, Richard, or anyone else may disagree with your views, if you are an MP, you must be able to air them without fear. An attack on one politician is an assault on our democracy itself.
And yesterday, Ian, you spoke with the former Labour MP Paula Sherriff. She's had hundreds of violent threats made against her during her time in Parliament. But as she told you, the threats did not end when she lost her seat in the Commons.
Last year, I received a tweet, and it was public, saying you deserve a 9mm bullet in your head. And I hope you die of cancer, which is lovely. I'm a cancer patient. I'm a cancer survivor, so obviously unpleasant on both accounts. So I contacted my local police force. That's West Yorkshire Police. They came out the following day, took a statement off me. They were with me for a few hours. The man who sent this tweet, or I assume it's a man, is using a pseudonym on X. I reported the tweet or the post to X. They told me it did not contravene their community standards. Like, hello, really?
I mean,
you deserve a 9mm bullet in your head. Bearing in mind that I live 3 miles from Bristol, where Joe was killed.
Yeah.
And then. So the police came round, never heard from them, eventually kept ringing them, didn't get in touch. Still haven't heard anything from the police. And I've just looked now prior to taking the call this evening. The last communication I received from the police was the 5th of November last year, saying we're still reviewing this case. We'll get back in touch with you when there's anything to tell you. Well, it's now July and I've heard nothing.
And our team here at LBC have spoken privately with Paula Sherriff again today. We've approached West Yorkshire Police for a response. They've told us that West Yorkshire Police were contacted on the 7th of June last year by a victim who reported they received an offensive message in response to a post on social media. They say they spoke with the victim, recorded a crime of malicious communications and gathered available evidence. Unfortunately, they say these inquiries did not identify the person who is responsible. They're now making further inquiries into what attempts were made to update the victim. We'll be following up, of course, this with West Yorkshire Police and Paula Sherriff herself in the days ahead. But Ian, you and I know, we cover this all the time. The threats against politicians just don't seem to be going away, do they?
Natasha Clock there, our political editor. Right, back to your calls on Keir Starmer's legacy. Let's talk to Luke in Lewis. Hello, Luke.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
Just before I start with my point, I just would like to say I attended the talk you did yesterday in Victoria Tower Garden.
Oh, right.
So I just want to thank you and say that to you because I found that very valuable and very useful. So
well, let me just explain what that was all about.
Yeah.
I was talking to 20, 30 younger people, I would say 18 to 25 maybe, who were about to spend a few days or a week volunteering or working on internships in Parliament. And so it was a great group, actually, really engaged.
Yeah, well, I mean, I really enjoyed it as well.
Good,
and I had a great rest of the day. But so as to my point, as though I'm a young person, and I think something that Keir Starmer had a real opportunity with is to go for attracting more people my age with the job market, particularly the graduate job market. So I've just come out of university, actively looking for jobs, and something that struck me is that every year there are far more graduates coming out of uni than there are graduate jobs. So that just decreases the value of a degree. You know, you go to a company and you say, "Oh, I've got a degree," and they go, "Yeah, but so does everyone, mate." You know, I mean, whereas, you know, a long time, decades ago, having a degree was something to really sort of, you know, it was.
Yeah, but you can't have it both ways, can you? If you want to open the university sector up to far more 18-year-olds than used to go, and when I went to university, I think about 17% of school leavers at the age of 18 went to university. Well, now it is somewhere between 45 and 50%. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think you would also want to go back to the days when university access was fairly restrictive.
Well, not restrictive, but I do think, I mean, fundamentally, I think there was a target, possibly by the EU, to get 50% of young people into university a few years ago. And that sounds great, but I just think university should be a luxury good. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, not going to university and getting a trade. That's perfectly respectable. But I just mean that, so, you know, I come out of uni with debt, with blah, 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 and firms rightly want to employ the best people for their jobs. So they employ the highest achieving, and the rest of the graduates are left with, you know, as good as not having a degree because they can't get a grad job. And that's just something I'm finding really frustrating.
I have to say, my memory of when I graduated was that many of my contemporaries also found it as difficult as you're finding it to get jobs. Graduate unemployment is nothing new. It's been there, well, I suppose, forever in a way. And certainly in the 1980s, when there was very high unemployment more generally, I mean, about 3 million people were unemployed, it was quite difficult for graduates. But of course, now you've got the added competition from AI, whereas, as I understand it, the number of graduate jobs available on the so-called university milk round, where big companies go around the universities to try and cherry-pick people to work in their organisations, graduate jobs are down by a third this year, purely because of AI.
Well, that sort of thing doesn't surprise me. And, you know, I mean, I'd be very interested to look into sort of empirical evidence in the model of why you say that even when you were graduating, much of the same trend was being seen. But it just, because I studied economics, you see, so it got me thinking. I was thinking, well, the very fact that there is a lot more graduates every year than there are graduate jobs, that has to be a fundamental problem, I thought.
Yeah, well, it is. And I don't think, I mean, my friend Jackie Smith is university's minister, so I'm going to be, having given her a massive bear hug at my book launch this morning, I'm not going to slag her off. But I think it has been a challenge for the government to try to appeal to people of your age, because, I mean, it is a scandal that the interest rate on the loans that you're going to have to repay is so much higher than the Bank of England base rate. As I understand it, it's what, 6% or something that is charged on student loans, and it really should not be that way. And I think the challenge for any future education secretary and the challenge for Andy Burnham is to try and rectify that, because I think everybody, you don't have to be a graduate to understand that it's a patent unfairness, and I think that is something that Keir Starmer's government has failed to address.
I agree, yeah, and you know, I've never voted Labour, but I think if that was something,
well, to be fair, Luke, you've only been able to vote in one election, haven't you?
That is fair. That is true. But no. But I've also had local elections.
Oh, I see. Right.
But I think if they got that sorted out a little bit more, I would be a lot more sympathetic to it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Robin in Whitehaven. Hello, Robin.
Hello, Ian. I think talking of legacies aren't really known for at least 10 years, even longer sometimes, because in 20 or 30 years' time, no one will really know or care what the economy or what inflation was doing at the time. I think it's big world stage events that dictate legacies. If you look at Harold Wilson and Ted Heath, they kept us out of the Vietnam War. So I think that, and then we can come forward and we can look at Tony Blair. His legacy, I think Tony Blair had done some good things with the Sure Start, but his legacy will be the Iraq and Afghanistan war. And I think he lost a lot of support for Labour because of that. And I know that Starmer and Labour, at the beginning of the American and Israeli and Iran conflict, I know the Labour Party were initial response was dreadful, but he has actually kept us out of a war which Tony Blair failed to do, from pressure of the Americans looking for these supposedly weapons of mass destruction. So I think if you look at the world events, Kennedy's legacy was he squared up to the Russians over the Cuban missile crisis. So I think history could be kind to Starmer, even though I would rate him, like you said, I would rate him on par with Theresa May. I think history will probably be kind to him. And I'm not a fan of Starmer, but I just think history will look back at this war, because it's usually war events that dictate legacies.
Yeah, I think that is partially true. If you go back to 1945 and go through each prime minister and say, well, what's the one thing they will be remembered for? Often they are military issues. I mean, Margaret Thatcher, you could say, well, she'd probably be remembered for many things, but I think the Falklands War is certainly one. Thank you very much, Robin. Let's go to Rishi in Pinner. Hello, Rishi.
Hey, how are you?
Hi. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I was listening on the radio, and I was driving, and I think it's quite natural for us to slag somebody off because there are things that have been going wrong, and things have been going wrong for a long time. But I think we should also balance the perspective a little bit with what's going right, what has been done well, and unless we don't recognize what has been done well, we are not going to reinforce positive behavior, and it will just be a contest of, oh, it was so bad, and we'll.
So what's been done well
in the politicians? Well, if you remember 2.5 years ago, what were the top headlines in the news? One of the biggest headlines, the most frequent one, was NHS. Our NHS was in shambles. We had growing waiting lists. We had all kind of issues there. We had doctors striking. All of those issues. We don't have them now. Nobody talks about NHS.
Well, hang on a sec. We did have doctors striking right up until the last few weeks.
Yes, but do you see the NHS issue being as prominent in the news as it was 2.5 years ago?
Well, that's an interesting issue. I mean, I'm not sure I would judge it just on the news coverage that the NHS gets. I think Conservative governments have always had a lot of criticism over their handling of the NHS. And I get that. I'm not sure that things have improved so dramatically, though.
If you look at empirical evidence of the waiting list, do you see the numbers going down, going up, staying the same?
Well, they are going down. I mean, I think they were going down at the end of the last Conservative government. But, I mean, that's what we want to see. We do want to see waiting lists going down. I would say they aren't going down fast enough, but maybe I'm nitpicking. Rishi, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to a break. It's 7:47.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
What on earth is going on in Prime Minister's questions today? It's gone all gentle. It's gone all kind. There was more mention of Jude Bellingham than anyone else. Has it lost its bite? Or is it just a way of acknowledging that Keir Starmer is on his way out?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Us kids are mesmerised by the mundane, entranced by the everyday. Where grown-ups see a snail, we see a slippery shelled beast from the undergrowth. But around 1 in 5 young children have a sight condition that can get in the way of all that wonder. The good news is, if these are found early, they can be managed or corrected. So book your child a free eye test at Specsavers today. Find out more at specsavers.co.uk/kidstests.
Octopus Energy. Great value and outstanding customer service. Recommended by which? A record 9 years running.
How does a $20 golf gadget end up being used as a bomb detector in war zones worldwide? I'm Alice Levine, and this is Explosive Lies, the podcast exposing a scam that fooled governments and security services across the globe. Open our free Global Player app and search Explosive Lies to start listening today.
Ever notice how some things are just standard? Traffic on the M4, standard. Meetings that could have been an email, standard. But at Aon, our cars are driving the new standard. The new Aeon V has rapid charging, standard. Panoramic glass roof, standard. 8 years servicing, 8 years MOT, 8 years roadside assistance, and up to 8 years warranty. Also standard, thanks to our great 8 promise. Search Aeon Auto to test drive today. T's and C's apply. When your daughter's wedding guest list is double-sided, enjoy every hand-clapping second of it. Be a step ahead with Barclays Premier, with our best savings rates. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply, T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:49 on LBC. Now, some of you who were listening to Thomas Warbrick presenting breakfast this morning, you will have heard me talking about a book that I've got out today. It's my autobiography, believe it or not. I know I'm far too young to write an autobiography, aren't I? And it's published to coincide with my birthday as well. So it's been quite a big day today. We did a book launch at the Hippodrome Casino in London at lunchtime, which was very well attended, sold lots of books. And the book is called Have I Said Too Much? My Life in Politics and the Media. And I've actually written it. I suppose I've aimed it at LBC listeners because I've spent the last 17 years talking to you all about politics, about all sorts of things. We've had some very personal moments, lots of emotional moments. And the last quarter of the book is all about what it's like being on the radio, presenting a show most days. And I've written it all down. And so I hope that some of you might want to buy it. It's, as I say, called Have I Said Too Much? It's out today in all good and bad bookshops. If you want a signed copy, very happy to do signed copies via my own website at politicos.co.uk. So I want to play you a little bit of an interview I've done with my best friend, Daniel Forrester. Some of you may remember I interviewed him maybe 4 or 5 years ago for my All Talk podcast. It was all about our friendship, and it still remains one of the most downloaded podcasts that I've done. So this is the latest episode of the Iain Dale All Talk podcast. So I shared some of the stories and discussed many of the themes within my new book, including family values, failures and triumphs in life, masculinity, sexuality, yes, of course we had to, as well as some of the 300,000 calls and interviews spanning my career here on LBC.
It was beautiful to read a story that you and I know well. And I wonder if you'd be so kind as to take us to a page from your lovely biography, page 109.
Oh, you're going to make me read this out, and it'll be something where I'm going to cry, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want you to begin. Absolutely, I want you to begin at the bottom of page 109 with the paragraph that begins "the same May." Let's listen here, everyone, to a beautiful passage from Iain's biography.
That same May, we planned a trip to the Normandy beaches, where the 50th anniversary of D-Day was about to be commemorated. Daniel and I took our respective fathers, together with my uncle Steve, Kiddy, and a dear family friend, Dennis Nichols. We stayed in Dennis's son Alistair's lovely little rustic cottage about 20 miles inland. It was one of the best holidays of my life, full of emotion and some great banter with the French, who seemed to want to thank us personally for what our countrymen had done to liberate them in 1944. It was great to spend 5 days overseas with my dad, a man who normally hated holidays and didn't have a lot of time for abroad. Daniel's dad, Ed, is no longer with us, nor is Dennis Nichols, who was such an important part of the events of that week. Here I go. I adequately can't put into words what happened on that bastard you.
Yes.
On that holiday, but all who were there know how special it was. It was part last of the summer wine, part school trip, except the roles were reversed, with Daniel and I being the teachers and the old boys becoming the kids. I remember being in a restaurant one evening and my dad was complaining about the foreign muck on his plate. You'll sit there until you eat it, I remember telling him rather sternly. And do you know what? He did, and he enjoyed it. He also became a bit of a hit with the French waitresses, I seem to remember. And on a visit to a cafe at Juno Beach, I saw him dancing with one of them. There was certainly life in the old dog that trip. The week was full of feeling as we visited the 5 beaches where those brave soldiers and sailors landed. We visited the wonderfully well-kept cemeteries and never failed to get a little bit emotional as we paid our respects to those who had fallen. We even went to a German war cemetery. I'd expected my father to refuse to set foot in the grounds, but strangely it affected him more than it did the rest of us. I've rarely seen my dad cry, but he had tears running down his cheeks.
I mean,
as they are mine now.
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you a second here because I'm back there on that trip with you. It was one of the most unexpected things in my life. My father, who you got to know wonderfully on that trip and met several times, he was a World War II veteran, and he never got to see kinetic battle. He was in the process of becoming, of being elevated to an officer. They saw officer potential in him in the Navy. So to be in that experience, Iain, on the eve of the anniversary, such a milestone in American history, and then I tell every person that I meet, my daughter went to Normandy 2 summers ago on a trip that was extraordinary. Until you are there, until you feel the gravity of it, you don't understand how close we came as a society and what these men, the Canadians, the British, the Americans, the Allies did. But for us, it wasn't just the gravity of history, which we felt. What you put into words there was you and I sort of becoming, watching our fathers. We all will age, we will lose faculty. My father was doing his damnedest to keep up with your dad, the farmer. My dad was not a farmer. Your father was extremely fit and younger, of course, by at least a decade. But there was something just absolutely magical about that trip that I thought you captured so beautifully. And I wonder if you have a final bookend here as we continue our conversation.
I think it was the first time that I saw my father aging. I mean, your father, as you say, was 10 years older, and I know there were times on that holiday, I don't even want to call it a holiday, that trip, where you had to sort of take me aside and say, look, I think he's flagging a bit. And I mean, I got to see a lot more of that with my father later on. I took my dad. In fact, one of the last trips we went on was in 2010. My mother rang me up one day and said, look, he wants to go on this coach trip with some friends to Arnhem to see what happened there in the Second World War. She said, would you go with him? Because I'm just a bit worried that he needs a bit of support. And it was very inconvenient for me because the day we came back was my first day of my regular programme on LBC, and I was paranoid that we wouldn't get back in time.
Yes.
And he was finding it much more difficult to get about at that point. But again, it was a very, very magical trip. And it's not pleasant to see your parents deteriorate. And I saw that with both my parents. And it was, I found it very difficult to cope with psychologically, I think, and particularly towards the end of his life, where my sister effectively became his carer. I can remember, in fact, it was only 3 weeks before he died. I think she was going away with my other sister somewhere and said, would I go and stay the weekend with my dad? So, of course I will. And I remember him sitting on the couch and trying to get some words out, but it was like you're playing a record and the needle got stuck and he just couldn't get the words out. And I thought, oh my God, what's happening here? And then there were signs that his sort of short-term memory was starting to go, and I said to Sheena, why didn't you tell me about this? And it was it's really upsetting. I mean, I really realised what she had to contend with there, and I felt and I do say this in the book, I think, that I didn't fulfil my responsibilities. But I was doing two full-time jobs at the time, but I didn't go back enough. I didn't really... Looking back, I left too much to her and my other sister, which I still feel guilty about.
This is the condition of being in the sun, right? And watching the deterioration. Thank you for sharing all that, and thank you for it was your mastermind to put that trip together, and here we are all these years later. I'd go back there in a minute with you, my friend.
Do you realise that's 31 years ago?
Well, we have to go back and do it together, and then.
If you ever came back to this country, Daniel, I mean, it's always me that comes to America. You never come here.
I know.
Such a bad friend.
I know.
That's my best friend, the political commentator Daniel Forrester, interviewing me for the latest episode of the Iain Dale All Talk podcast, which is you can get now wherever you get your podcasts from, and about my new memoir, Have I Said Too Much? It's available now in hardback. Should be available as an audiobook in the next few days via Audible or Amazon, but not quite there yet. I have recorded it, and it's just waiting approval. I don't know what they have to approve, but anyway. Right, in the next hour, it is Wednesday's Cross Question. We have the Labour MP for South Derbyshire, Samantha Niblett, Ellie Hodges, political commentator and broadcaster, Andy Twelves, journalist and writer, and Bethany Dawson, LBC's political correspondent. They're here to answer your questions. Love a question on Keir Starmer's legacy, what you're expecting in the future from Andy Burnham, in fact, anything you like. The number to call 0345 6060 973. You can, excuse me, I just burped. You can text 84. We've had tears, we've had burps. What are we going to get in the next hour? 0345 6060 973. And of course, you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the end of an era for Sir Keir Starmer.
Goodbye.
His final word as he ended his last Prime Minister's questions. He was given a standing ovation by his own MPs and told the House of Commons he wholeheartedly supports his successor, Andy Burnham. Lord Kinnock, former Labour leader, said he watched with a tear in his eye.
It was unavoidably emotional, given all the circumstances. What was great was, not surprisingly, Keir was very graceful. He was light-footed. And Kemi Badenoch was very well behaved.
The leader of the opposition said she admired Sir Keir's stance on Ukraine, but joked that they rarely agreed on anything. A man has been arrested on suspicion of sending threatening messages to an MP. Reform UK says an ex-post threatened to shoot Nigel Farage during the local elections earlier this year. Following the suspected murder of Anne Widdecombe, the Reform Party has called for 24/7 protection for MPs. Attorney General Richard Hermer has exclusively told LBC we need to strike a balance.
We obviously have to keep people in public life safe, but we also can't put ourselves in a kind of a total ivory castle with no relationship with the people we're here to serve. And it's a really difficult balance. We also don't have thousands of police officers.
16 and 17-year-olds will soon have access to social media denied overnight to try to stop them scrolling. But critics say it's pointless, as they'll be able to switch off the restriction. Matthew Bergman, who led a landmark lawsuit on behalf of a young user against Meta and YouTube, told LBC it's a step in the right direction.
What we see is the kids that have the worst addictions are the kids that start early on. By the time kids are 16, they at least have a fighting chance of pushing back. But it's not enough. We don't let kids drive cars until they're 16, but once they get in the car, we require seatbelts and airbags. Same thing with social media.
A 14-year-old's been charged over an alleged plan to target 2 mosques in Sutton in South London. The teenager, who can't be named because of his age, is due in court tomorrow. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 13 points at 10,515. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.18. LBC weather. Dry tonight for most, with some patchy cloud. Lows of 8 to 19 Celsius. Dry and sunny tomorrow with a chance of a late shower in the southwest. Top temperature 13 to 30 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC. From Global. Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question with me, Iain Dale. On the panel with me, they're all debutants tonight, so what could possibly go wrong? To my left, Bethany Dawson, LBC's political correspondent. To her left, journalist and writer Andy Twelves. To my right, Samantha Niblett, Labour MP for South Derbyshire. And to her right, Ellie Hodges, political commentator and broadcaster. They would love you to send in questions or phone in with your question on 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, or you can, of course, watch us. No, and of course, you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, let's go to the first question. It's from Alistair in Sutton. What one act defines Keir Starmer's time as Prime Minister? Samantha.
Oh, gosh, one. That's like Sophie's Choice. It felt hugely moving to be in the chamber yesterday when we delivered the third reading and did the third reading of the Hillsborough law. And I think Keir will feel incredibly proud of himself for that, not least because it helps to build trust back between big institutions and the everyday person. But there are loads of things that he's done that will be a fantastic legacy. Rebuilding our relationship with Europe, the fact that he's been honoured with the Légion d'honneur in France is just wonderful and testament to his character. The fact that we're lifting 500,000 children out of poverty, waiting lists are dropping with the NHS, all the things that we plan to do in his manifesto. If you look at there's I forget the website online, but it's always like a manifesto tracker. And there are so many things that we're either delivering or on target to deliver. It's quite something.
Which makes one wonder, why has he been ditched?
Yeah, I know.
Were you always a supporter, or?
Yes, I was. That doesn't mean that, I won't support whoever is leader of the Labour Party.
Of course not. I'm sure you've been eager to nominate Andy.
No, I didn't nominate.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't nominate Andy, actually, no. Not because he won't have my full support when he's Prime Minister, but I completely understand why the majority of my colleagues decided to nominate Andy, not least to show a sign of unity and the fact that the handover is a non-chaotic one, which again I think is testament to Keir Starmer's character. But there was just a little bit of me that just thought the two things can coexist. I can feel like the process for which he was ousted from his role was inappropriate, and I can also believe that I want the Labour government to deliver, and it will under Andy. But just for me, and it's a very personal decision, he didn't need my nomination. It doesn't mean I'm not going to back him as Prime Minister, but no, I didn't.
It's interesting because I was on Politics Live yesterday with your colleague Joanne Baxter, and she didn't either, which I was quite surprised at. Yeah. And she said that was it the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting where you could all ask him questions, which is frankly more than most people have got to do. And she didn't get to ask him her question, so she emailed it to him. So, of course, we all wanted to know what the question was, but she wasn't saying. Yeah. OK, Ellie Hodges, one legacy from Keir Starmer.
I think, obviously, Samantha, you've been part of the government, so you will understand kind of more of the good things that he's done because you've seen that all happen. But I think to your average person, in 10, 20 years' time, there's not any really main accomplishment that he has had that people will still be talking about in 10, 20 years' time. I think he's someone who's been a mediocre Prime Minister. I think that he'll be remembered by his U-turns, the countless amount of resets he had. I think that one of the first things that obviously happened was Southport when he came into power. I think his response to that will also be remembered. But I think overall he's just been a mediocre Prime Minister that has only lasted 2 years.
You're not taking a leaf out of Kemi Badenoch's book, are you? She was very nice to him today.
I think that was really nice what we saw in the chamber today at PMQs, and I do think that's the right way to kind of end being Prime Minister, and it'd be quite respectful, and it's quite nice actually to have people that do disagree with each other actually be polite and be respectful and say, okay, you did this well. I know that Kemi Badenoch mentioned about his family. I thought that was quite a nice touch there, and they both kind of said, I know Keir said that he respected Kemi Badenoch for kind of helping him and being polite to him and helping him when there was really big struggles. I thought that was nice, and I think that it is good that people do have political conversations when they don't agree with each other, just like we are now. I know we all don't agree with each other here, but it's so important that we continue having conversations with people that we politically disagree with.
Bethany.
I think there are two answers, and because it has been, a
premiership of ups and downs, I think is fair to say.
Aren't they all?
Aren't they all? Sure. But I think, the first thing is winter fuel. I think that was sort of essentially a first stumble that will be remembered, firstly for the fact that it was one of the biggest U-turns, but also it was probably one of the biggest points of, it was something that was decided very quickly. It was something that was not communicated very well. It was something that ended up being incredibly controversial, and something that is still coming up when I speak to MPs. They say, I'm trying to say all of the good things that genuinely the government have done, and I keep being told that winter fuel has lost it for my constituents. So it's definitely something that has essentially scarred Keir Starmer. But a thing that was equally, incredibly moving, as Samantha said, was the Hillsborough legislation being making its way through the House of Commons yesterday. And I think in terms of Keir Starmer's career as a barrister, and then the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, and then as Prime Minister, that's quite a good sort of journey to get through, right? His different careers culminating in this, changing the law, changing the way the state and sort of vulnerable people interact with each other. I think both of those are good examples of things that have gone incredibly badly, but also well.
It is interesting that certainly over the last couple of weeks, it's almost as if the government's been hyperactive to try and get some legacy things through, and the Hillsborough thing being one, in that I think a lot of people thought that could have been done a long time ago, but he was desperate to get it through in the final week before he leaves office. There have been quite a few other things like that, haven't there? There
have, and there's also a real sense of kind of frustration, essentially, from ministers that I speak to, who essentially say, turns out we could have done this. Turns out we can actually do things quite quickly. We can make moves.
Finally worked out how to pull the levers of power.
But whether that is on social, changes to the social media regulations, whether it's on Hillsborough, they're essentially, this is proof that it could have gone differently. And maybe, no, this isn't momentum that could have been kept up for 2 years. But there is a sense that essentially it just should have been done differently.
Yeah. Okay, anti-12s.
I think it's just on that. Tony Blair said something like, you come into power at your most popular and your least wise, and you leave at your least popular and your most wise. And when you have finally got that experience to figure out how Number 10 and the government works, you're on the way out. I think if there was one positive thing to define, probably the Iran war. One of your callers earlier was talking about Harold Wilson's refusal to get involved with Vietnam, and that's something that's gone on for generations as the kind of real positive of the Wilson government. I think that will probably be looked back on as, I'm really glad that we didn't get involved in that. I think as a negative legacy, I think the end of Broadchurchism within the Labour Party. I think you've seen, especially amongst the members, a real destroyal of the coalition that held the party together for its 125 years that has been lost. Some really good socialists and people who would have traditionally been on the left quite happily of the party, who have gone off to your party and whatever that is now, and the Green Party and independents. And I think that is a sad moment for the Labour Party, to be honest.
I suppose that really started under Corbyn, didn't it? And that you had people drifting off from the centre, and now they've been drifting off from the left.
I don't think it was as institutional under Corbyn. I think Corbyn's leadership drove people to leave voluntarily, but I think there was an overreach in the purges during the Starmer years.
OK, let's move on to a caller. It's Kira, who's a new caller in Cardiff. Hello, Kira.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to ask?
So I'd like to ask, what exactly are the government doing to protect graduates out of university? You see, I'm in my final year. I'm doing my master's degree, and I currently have no money to my name. I'm having to sell things online to make money. I've got about £6 in my bank account, and I'm so sick of not having money, and I really think that there should be something done to help younger people like myself get work and employment. I've applied for hundreds and hundreds of jobs. No one's got back to me. Is it easier for the government to say that essentially it's better for them to just keep employing people within the company rather than fire and rehire? Is anybody able to give me a precise, accurate sort of understanding of what's going on? Because as a young person, I'm quite frustrated, really.
So you're about to start your final year?
I'm currently doing my master's degree. I got my tuition loan, but given the current state economically, how things are going, I've had to pay a lot out, and I currently have no money. And I can't find a job at all.
And what are you studying?
I am studying masters in film, but obviously with the use of AI as well. Yeah. I don't know how safe I'm going to be able to get a job within the industry. So it's just almost having that sort of, not reassurance, but sort of hearing from somebody who works in the government to be able to give me clarification as where I stand as a younger person within society.
Okay, well, I don't normally come to somebody twice first, and particularly when they're making their debut on the programme, Samantha, but I suppose that's kind of more aimed at you than anybody else. I hear this a lot on the programme, people of Ciara's age, who, whether they're undergraduates or doing a master's, have kind of lost all sense of hope. And obviously the AI issue, particularly with what Ciara's studying, is of concern. There's always been a concern about graduate unemployment, even when I left university, many decades ago, 4 decades ago. So this is nothing new in some ways, but the extent of it is new. And when people start to lose hope, that's when society starts fragmenting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And Ciara, I can almost feel the desperation in your voice, and my heart goes out to you. It really does. I am a mum to an 18-year-old who's just finished her A-levels. Now, she doesn't want to go to university because she doesn't want the debt. So she's looking at apprenticeship. So I can tell you all the things we're doing for the next generation coming up, but that's no consolation for you. I think one of the hardest things is everything is just so expensive. And here I am sounding like all doom and gloom, but everything is so expensive, isn't it? And so even sometimes when even if you're just trying to do a part-time job to pay your way, it feels like all your money goes on just that, and then you can't live a good life to enjoy yourself. So one of the most important things that happened when we got into power was the Prime Minister and the Chancellor focused on creating stability so that the markets were comfortable, so that we create the kind of environment where we start to get productivity going, where businesses feel comfortable to base themselves here and then to grow and then to take on more staff. I completely hear you in the fact that your line of work is particularly challenging. Probably I've done a huge amount of work with the creative industries on the AI and copyright stuff. I am a firm believer, as I'm sure everybody around this table is, that the creative industries are one of the most fantastic things this country has got and exports. Is there a silver bullet to solve the challenge that you've got right now, Ciara? There isn't. Can I guarantee that you're going to have a job in your chosen field? I can't. What I can tell you is that we have got such a passion to make life easier for people who haven't been born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and to bring them opportunity. But is that going to happen overnight? No, it's not. And much like you, I'm just as concerned about graduates who spend all that time and money dedicated to university degree, and then are walking away and not being able to walk into jobs.
But I think many people might say, if you can promise an 18-year-old either a training place, a job for a certain amount of time, why can't something similar be created for graduates?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Iain. And perhaps one that, it's a very good question. And perhaps that's something I can go back and talk to the relevant department about, talk to Bridget about, and to the Department for Work and Pensions about. The trouble is, it's hard for lots of people, but young people in particular, and you're right, we need to be in a position where we're giving them hope. So there are things like we want to help make sure that people have got a home, that we're building houses that are affordable for people. But if you can't get a mortgage because you can't get a job, then I'm not giving Ciara any additional hope. So I wish I could give like a silver bullet and say there's all these things we're going to do, but I don't want to wind you up by telling you all the things that we are doing that aren't directly attributed to graduates.
Right, we'll come to the 3 other panellists in just a few moments' time. It's 17 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. So who's ready for the best summer yet? Unwind in your choice of 4- and 5-star hotels in over 75 destinations like Kos, Lake Garda and Gran Canaria. Plus, you'll get 22 kilograms of baggage included. Book now and save £200 per couple. Jet2 Holidays. Package holidays you can trust. National protected. Subject to availability and conditions.
London. The app for black cabs is here. Jump. Get about with drivers who have the world-famous knowledge and know every street in London. And unlike other black cab apps, you'll only pay the meter fare. No booking fees, no surge fees, no it's raining fees, no there's a game on fees. No fees ever. Just tap the app to hail your black cab. Jump, the app for the cabs that made London, London. Download Jump today.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN, subject to coverage.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
90 minutes past 8 on LBC. Our panel is Bethany Dawson, LBC's political correspondent, Andy Twelves, journalist and writer. What do you specialise in, Andy?
Political coverage and features, thankfully.
And being an all-round legend.
Oh, thank you.
Ellie Hodges is a political commentator and broadcaster. And Samantha Niblett, Labour MP for South Derbyshire, who hit the headlines, and I'm sure you knew that I was going to bring this up. You were promoting what you called a summer of sex. Yes. How's that going for you, Samantha?
Well, hold fire, because next week I'm launching the summer of
sex. Are you?
Yeah, so it's very exciting to keep your eyes peeled. Middle of next week. And
would you like to launch it on this programme?
No, because I promised other people I'll wait until next week. Yeah, but have me back again next week and I can tell you more about it.
Such a tease.
Such a tease. But the ambition is to take away the guilt, shame and embarrassment around talking about sex, so that we can have people that are better connected, that don't feel embarrassed to talk about it. We can remember the joy and connection it should bring humans. But then another really important element is making sure that where shame, guilt and embarrassment are, sexual predators thrive. You want to get rid of it to give them far less of an opportunity to do that.
Were you surprised at the reaction that you got when you started talking about this a couple of months ago? Because, I mean, people were being a bit prudish and say we sort of shouldn't be talking about these things in Parliament. And I'm thinking, well, Parliament is supposed to be the debating chamber of the nation, and these things are actually quite important.
Yeah, so I was told I was brave for putting my head above the parapet, and I didn't realise I was until I realised I was. But here's the thing, I'm a woman of a certain age, mother to a daughter who is 18, and I feel if there's anyone that's probably best placed to do it, it's going to be someone like me. We are seeing it creating division. We are seeing it, we're seeing boys being dragged down the manosphere. We're seeing just relationships breaking down. And I just think there's an opportunity here to do something good. And so that's what it's about.
And of course, one of your predecessors was Edwina Currie, who wrote some very steamy novels.
I didn't know she wrote steamy novels.
No, they're very good. I can highly recommend them.
Do you know, Edwina is somebody who's still bearing in mind that she hasn't been the MP for South Derbyshire since 1997, still to this day, people will say she was a wonderful constituency MP. Yeah. It's really lovely.
Well, I'm coming up to Buxton to the Literary Festival in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm going to be having dinner with Edwina.
Are you?
You should come along.
Yeah, I would love to meet her. I'd love to meet her.
Right. On that note, I like you. Right, let's go to another question. Let's go to Nicole in Hull, who says, international economists say Burnham should get rid of the pensioner triple lock in order to save £60 billion. Do you think he'll be the Prime Minister who will finally have the guts to do it? Andy?
No, I don't think so. It's a vote killer. Pensioners are one of the most politically active groups in this country. This is objectively to the detriment of pensioners, whether you think about wider society or not. They're not going to vote for someone who does it. I think pension age has just been increased 7 years early, up to 68, is it now, 67? And I think that's actually not going to be the issue, because by the time people in their 20s and 30s get to state pension age, it will be in the 70s, and that won't really be a problem.
I mean, do all three of you who are
I've got a private pension.
Present company accepted. Yeah. Sort of. Do you think you're actually going to get a state pension when you reach that age?
No. I think the big problem when we get up to our 60s and 70s will be private pension inequality, because those that have worked in quite good jobs or in more professional settings, like the trades that we do, will have a more kind of scheduled and more set up private pension plan, whereas people who work at Tesco's, for example, will have a lot less contributions, employer contributions, than we do. And I think that is going to be a real issue in the next 30, 40, 50 years. I think private pension equality is going to be the pension issue.
Bethany?
I don't feel like I'm going to get a pension. I think one of the things that we keep saying about Andy Burnham's incoming premiership is welfare is going to be one of the top issues in his in-tray that he's going to need to deal with. And when we talk about welfare, we always talk about benefits and disability benefits and out-of-work benefits. The biggest slice of the welfare pie is pensions. And that is not me necessarily saying that I think they need to be cut, but it is saying that I think it is wrong to have this conversation without talking about the whole welfare bill. And as our texter texted, economists are saying this is unaffordable. I do think it is just irresponsible to ignore this large part. And there is also the point, firstly, I semi-disagree with you. I think pensioners already aren't going to vote for Labour. So I completely agree it is a vote killer. I think they're already dead. But
so in that case, why not do it?
Well, fabulous question, because my other point was going to be, I think it's going to attract young people, because people currently, as you say, are looking into their 60s and 70s who are in their 20s thinking, I'm not going to get a state pension. But we're also looking at people that are of state pension age when we can't afford houses, when we have callers who are at university not knowing how they're going to put food on their plates. This is not just an issue of how a pensioner is going to manage, which is an incredibly important question, but it's also how are we going to manage this massive generational unfairness we currently have.
Okay, Ellie?
I mean, it's a conversation that we need to have, even though it is a difficult one. And as you said, I think it's 55% of welfare spending is spent on pensions, which is a massive amount. And I do think we should keep the triple log, because I think it's £250 pensioners get per week when you actually look at it. It's not a luxurious amount of money. And I do get frustrated when people talk about pensioners as if they're getting so much money from the state, because they're really not.
How about this for an idea? I think it should be taken out of the welfare budget, because it's not a welfare thing, is it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I do think that we do need to have a conversation. This isn't really a right-wing opinion, I would say. But I do think we have to have a conversation about the fact that there are billionaires and millionaires in this country that are still getting paid £250 a week for a pension when they don't really need it. And we actually do have some millionaires and billionaires that talk about this and say, I don't actually want it.
Well, they can feel free to send a cheque to the Treasury.
Exactly. But I do think that's a conversation that we need to have. And a lot of people shy away from talking about this because straight away they go, oh, you don't want to look after pensioners. Well, yes, I think we would all say we want people that have paid into the system their whole entire life to be treated well in retirement. But a conversation definitely needs to happen.
Samantha.
Well, it's a tricky one. We have an ageing population and a falling birth rate. So we have fewer people to carry, and I hate using the word burden, but the burden of the cost of it. I think part of the challenge is we don't, like most of us don't grow up learning about politics. I certainly didn't. And most people don't realise that it's not the money you've put away working that then is paying you in your retirement. It is the current generation that is paying for you. But at some point, that older generation was also paying for their previous older generation. There were just more of them to pay for fewer people. I'm a little bit. I'm with Andy on this one. I think it's a vote killer, but equally, we've just got to demonstrate that we're doing more for young people. Like we don't want to be disrespectful to older generations. We don't want to be feeling that we're taking something off them. But I do think we need to get a little bit better at talking about it. And your point's really valid, Ellie. Much like the winter fuel was 3 weeks in and a nightmare. But it was right to make it means tested. That was the right thing to do. And perhaps the means tested state benefit is...
Well, it sounds to me, although you haven't actually said it, that you're quite open to the abolition of the triple log.
No, I am open to making things fair. I don't know what that looks like.
That's a motherhood and apple pie statement.
Yeah, I know it is. I'm good at that. I genuinely worry about the next generation. But then I remember watching a clip about people in the early 90s who were in their early 20s, worried about what they're going to do when they're older. We've now got Gen Xers that are actually really quite well off for many reasons. So I'm hoping some magic is going to start happening soon that sees this young generation suddenly have this sort of opportunity that Gen Xers managed to have.
But do you worry that we are getting to a point where the younger generation, I don't know how we define younger generation, but I would say sort of under 30s, under 35s, I don't know, are being pitched against the older generation. And I don't think that's healthy for society in general.
No, it's not at all. And I think we should all believe that we should respect our elders and respect what they've done for this
Thank you very much, Alex.
But yeah, I do think that's true, that they're kind of being put against each other, which is not what we want at all. And I think that young people can actually learn a lot from older people. We need to kind of bring that back in society. And I think that it's really important that we do teach that in schools, in universities, and all of these kinds of institutions. But I think a big thing that young people are missing at the moment is they're not optimistic about the future, which is actually really sad, because young people should be feeling like, I'm at the start of my life, I can do what I want to do and I'm going to make it happen. But so many young people don't feel like that. And some of it is because actual issues, because of money or whatever it is, but some of it is also because they're being told everything is so bad all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves really regret the fact that in their first few months they were so doom and gloom, weren't they? And that feeds into the rest of the population. Think, well, if our leaders are talking like that, then things are possibly worse than we thought.
It's one thing, actually, I have to say, that I have resented. We had this one opportunity, which I think we've got a second opportunity now, but at the time we had this opportunity to change the nation's mood music, and we could have said it's going to be really hard, but we're going to go on a journey together. There'll be some bumps in the road, but we'll get there. Okay, we'll do it together. And instead we had it's all going to be terribly hard.
But you see, you've got the ability to communicate that, which I don't think either Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves did. And Andy Burnham, I think he will. He's going to be the vibes Prime Minister, isn't he?
Exactly.
And he's a good salesman, he's a good communicator, but the trouble is, has he got the product to sell? And I mean, that's something that I guess
Andy
we're about to
Burnham,
find out.
when I went up to Makerfield, I went up there, open eyes, just seeing what happened. I walked around and there was young people standing there with Andy for Us posters, with pop music on at full volume out of their speakers and dancing along. And I thought that actually looks quite fun, So he's actually got young people behind him and he's got enthusiasm. And I think that because everyone is all doom and gloom about the state of the country at the moment, when someone does come in and just offers a new perspective and says, actually, we can turn things around, people really like that.
I mean, I can remember when I was 15, this was 1978, and I saw a speech by Margaret Thatcher. And it was a speech where she diagnosed all the problems that the country was facing, but she didn't just do that, she then offered solutions. And I remember as a 15-year-old thinking, oh my God, somebody is coming up with something that sounds feasible. And that kind of inspired me to get involved in politics. And I think that's where Andy Burnham, I think, has the most fantastic opportunity now to make a success of things. Yeah. But as I say, we don't know what he's going to do. I just hope that he does.
Well, I think he's actually got quite lucky with the timing as well, because for some reason, in the last 3 weeks since Keir Starmer's resigned, he's learned how to communicate like a normal person. And, luckily for Andy Burnham, a lot of the stuff that the government have been working on over the last 2 years has come into effect now, like the Employment Rights Act and the Renters' Rights Act. And, you can really do some quite personal stories about, the abolition of no-fault evictions, because that will affect people like Kira, the caller earlier, who is a master's student and might be looking at housing uncertainty. And I think with Andy Burnham's communication ability, there will be some really, really, really easy wins that he can build off of Keir Starmer's time number 10 like that from the get-go.
Sure. So here's the thing, like we got into power and I remember doing a video clip about this back in May, saying the first 2 years are always going to be the hardest because that's when you're pushing through new legislation. I know you say you can click your fingers and make stuff happen quickly, but there is still a process. And so the first 2 years are always going to be the hardest. We always said we needed a decade of national renewal. To do that, you have to do the hardest thing the first 2 years so that you're electable come the next general election. So where Andy's walking in right now is on 2 years of that hard work having been done. So maybe we end up having been the dream team that Keir and Rachel did this grunty work, and then he walks in as people are starting to feel the benefit, to your point. But we'll never know whether we'd have turned it around under Keir now. So,
right, it's time for the news at 8:32 on LBC with Matt Hewitt.
Sir Keir Starmer's told the House of Commons he's proud to leave the country in better shape than he found it. He's been at his final Prime Minister's questions, where he defended his record and insisted he'll give his successor his wholehearted support. The Met Police have arrested a man in his 20s on suspicion of sending threatening communications. It's after Reform UK leader Nigel Farage was warned ahead of the local election results on social media, "I am going to shoot you in the head if you win." And a 14-year-old's been charged over an alleged plan to target 2 mosques in Sutton in South London. We can't name him because of his age, but he'll be in court tomorrow. LBC weather, dry tonight for most with some patchy cloud, lows of 8 to 19. Dry and sunny tomorrow with a chance of a late shower in the southwest. Highs of 13 to 30 degrees.
This is LBC.
Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by which a record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
Get your own UK-based account manager, a beekeeper, for support with Pension Bee. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. When investing, your capital is at risk.
At Waitrose, you know you're a food lover when you're more gripped by the desserts you took to the park than your true crime book. Ooh. Make it a summer to remember with our dreamy range of #1 summer desserts. Like our secret centre strawberries with creamy mousse and zingy compote in every bite. Or our rich Madagascan vanilla ice cream, rippled with tangy blackcurrant. Available now at Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries, see travel differently. T's and C's apply.
Octopus Energy, great value and outstanding customer service, recommended by which a record 9 years running.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:35, Labour MP Samantha Niblet is here, political commentator Ellie Hodges, journalist and writer Andy Twelves, and LBC political correspondent Bethany Dawson. Derek says, Pakistan says Shabana Mahmood won't be able to bully them into taking the Rochdale grooming gang leader back. If we do end up stuck with this evil man, what should the government do in response? Threaten to cut off relations with Pakistan, possibly? Well, a bit of background to this. A Pakistani government official has told The Times that the UK has little leverage over Pakistan when it comes to attempts to deport Shabir Ahmed from the UK, and that no foreign government can dictate whether we accept an individual. The Home Secretary plans to change the terms of the Immigration Act of 1971, which currently means that this man cannot be deported because he came to live in the UK in 1967 when he was 14. Meanwhile, Shabir Ahmed has had to be moved for safety reasons because the address he was being kept at was posted on social media. Now, just purely by coincidence, I've got the amount of aid that we give to Pakistan every year. In 2024-25, it's projected to rise to £133 million, up from £41.5 million in 2023-2024. I would say that's possible leverage, but I mean, maybe I'm missing something. Andy?
I think playing with foreign aid budgets as a initial diplomatic reaction probably isn't right. You know, a lot of that won't be going to the government of Pakistan. It won't be going to the foreign ministry of Pakistan. It will be going to probably impoverished Pakistanis, I would imagine. And I don't think they should be punished for their government's ignorance. I think Shabana Mahmood's probably doing the right thing. Rare for me to say that, but I think she's doing the right thing about looking at amending the legislation to force the deportation. But I don't think, innocent people should be cut off from aid that is probably life-changing because of their government's actions. I don't think it'd be fair if, impoverished people here who got foreign aid were cut off because they didn't like Keir Starmer's decisions.
OK, Ellie?
Well, I mean, it is leverage, as you said, if we're giving that much foreign aid to a country that's refusing to take back people who have committed the most horrible, horrendous, awful crimes in this country. And I think that it does get to a point where we're seeing what's happening with these grooming gangs, and we're seeing the most awful things. When you hear some of the testimonies, I mean, they're absolutely awful. And when I see something like that, I just think of the girls that have been subject to what he's done. And I think, yes, he should be deported, and whatever that takes, if that does mean stopping foreign aid to Pakistan, I believe that's the right thing to do.
Samantha?
oh, goodness me, I hope Shabana takes no nonsense over this. And I was very pleased to see, actually, that Andy Burnham, when this first came to light, made it very clear that he would do everything within his power as a potential Prime Minister at the time to get the man out of the country. Much like Andy, I would hate to see people suffer because we cut foreign aid, but I would like to understand on what reasons we've agreed to increase foreign aid.
Treble foreign aid to them.
Yeah, well, I know it's a significant increase. So to your point, that's got to be leveraged. I don't want to see innocent people suffer, but it's Pakistan making that decision not to have this awful human returned to them. I get it. He's been a British citizen for a very long time, but also, it's only because of this legislation that thankfully Shabana is changing that he's been allowed to not be deported.
Do you ever think to yourself, if I got the call in the Andy Burnham reshuffle to be a minister and I have an issue like this to deal with, oh my God, how do you do that? I mean, people think that politicians who become ministers, they've got lots of easy decisions to make and all the rest of it. But this is the sort of thing that every minister has to cope with, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. International law is international law, and if it's down to the individual country whether they accept someone back or not, I suppose, but what do you do at that point? What do you do?
Bethany?
I think this is going to essentially be a massive test of the diplomacy skills of Andy Burnham, but also the sort of mystery people that he puts in his cabinet of his future Home Secretary, his future Foreign Secretary. There absolutely are points of leverage here. I mean, whether that is, as you say, foreign aid, whether that is sort of visa deals, whether that is, there are lots of harsh conversations that can be had to essentially force them to take back this horrific man. But as you say, any minister, any MP that gets the call over the weekend or on Monday to say, would you like to have this job, is going to have to essentially be hard as nails. They are going to have to take absolutely no games. I almost said something that wasn't games. But I feel strongly about this case. But they are going to have to take this very seriously. And it's actually one of the reasons why I was quite surprised today about the briefing that Shabana Mahmood was going to be moved to Chancellor, because I think she is very hard as nails in the Home Secretary brief. I mean, she's been not necessarily a fully loved Home Secretary by the Parliamentary Labour Party, but actually on topics like this, as you say, Samantha, she is not one to play games with.
But also, when you're talking about leverage, if you were talking about foreign aid, that's not just sitting in Shabana's. You'd have FCDO involved with that.
Given the choice, would you like to see Shabana Mahmood stay as Home Secretary or move to be Chancellor? Because that seems to be the speculation at the moment.
I think she has tackled immigration. And she has not been afraid to make some difficult choices. I know some of my colleagues don't like it. There are some of the things she's done that I'm struggling with. So people are over here and they were expecting to be able to settle permanently, to have to then to have been here for years and then to be told, sorry, you can't do it yet, it's going to be another 5 years or what have you. I think that's tough. Also, for people that are over here, like looking after our loved ones, working as care workers, I feel that we should perhaps be slightly more considerate of them, because we need those kinds of people supporting people at the most vulnerable. I think she's doing. It probably doesn't go well with some of my colleagues, but I think she's doing a tough job.
So you'd like to see her stay?
I would, yeah.
Okay. Right, thank you for that. Let's go to Jessie in Oxford, who says, the Met Office says weather which used to be extreme is now the new normal. What should we do to be able to live with loads of heat waves every summer? Does it mean we do need net zero? Now, the Met Office's top climate scientist says we're living in a time of historic and unprecedented change, and the evidence shows the climate of the 20th century has now gone, with the decade leading up to last year having been 1.33 degrees Celsius warmer on average than the period between 1961 and 1990. Bethany?
I think the thing I think of first is schools and hospitals, in terms of, I am someone that doesn't cope well in a heat wave. I'm not pleasant to be around when it's warm.
I've always found you perfectly pleasant.
The studios are cool the minute we get outside.
That's true. It is very cool in here, isn't it?
But, I think when I think of, places where things are incredibly difficult, schools and hospitals, there's even really annoying things. I have medication that has to be kept in a fridge, and I live in a top floor flat. The minute that something goes wrong, it is a nightmare to try and just keep medication cool. There are things that are really, difficult. We've had discussions this week about sort of maximum temperatures in workplaces. Again, we have a lovely cool studio. There are other people that are not as lucky. Indeed, people who work on sort of building sites and are completely not as lucky. But I think we do need.
We're just lucky we don't work on Radio X. It's like a sauna in there, Steve.
God, is it really?
They are the cool ones. But
I don't think Chris Moores has ever been described as cool. But,
I can't. With starting fights, he's not even here to defend himself here. I think it is almost obvious that we need to look at policies to manage this for people that are unwell, for small children, for manual labourers. Fundamentally the world has changed and the temperatures we're working in are not the ones that we were experiencing even 10 years ago.
Samantha?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's lots of people that say it's not a thing and weather changes over the years and it'll be cyclical. And we were talking about foreign aid. One of the key things about, and one of the key challenges to climate change is if it's hot here, it's even hotter near the equator, and it is driving more challenges for countries, and it will then drive more immigration because people are trying to escape to live. It's one of the many reasons. I know it depends who you ask whether they believe it or not. I'm delighted we're moving to renewable energy. I like that from an energy security perspective. I don't like the fact I've got 1,000,001 applications for solar farms in my constituency. So the good comes with the bad. But I do think we need to be looking at this more seriously. When year on year it's hotter, when it's like going on holiday, you do start to think, gosh, this is really happening. But again, like, we just have to look past the end of our noses. If we don't like immigration now, it is not going to get any easier if we don't tackle the climate crisis.
Ellie?
I mean, I think we're being slightly dramatic here. I know it's not going to be a popular opinion on this panel. But, you look at, we've had heat waves before. We had one in 2022. We had the 1976 heat wave. I've been talking to people that were there during the heat wave in 1976, and they said to me...
She says pointing to
everyone,
me.
That was not
I was. The Summer of Dancing Queen.
But I've spoken to people who were alive, and they've just said everyone just kind of got on with it. They thought it was a bit hot.
Surely the difference is that we've had 3 in the last month.
But I just think that everyone now it's a bit infantilised a little bit. It's like when you get on the tube and they go, make sure you're carrying a bottle of water. Like, I think people know how to deal with it. I do think that there's a serious questions to be asked about hospitals, for example. The fact, I've had a family member that's been in the NHS recently, and it was very, very hot in there, 0 aircon in some of the wards. That's not okay, and a conversation does need to be had about that. But I do think it's slightly dramatic to say that...
Do you know what Sorry,
I was just going to say about, for example, Hannah Spencer saying that people shouldn't go to work now because it's too hot. I mean, come on.
I think that there was an example of, the union have been doing a campaign about maximum temperature in work. There was a TfL bus driver, a unionised bus driver. It was 40 degrees in his cabin. I mean, could you imagine working? I mean, we're in this cool studio, in our kind of Iron Tower. Could you imagine driving a bus for 8 hours a day in 40-degree heat?
Yeah,
and that's in a bus where you move and you've got a bit of wind and all the rest of it. Could you imagine being on the shop floor of an Amazon warehouse? I think we do need to kind of get a grip and realise, we are just Westminster pundits at the end of the day, and people are, actually really working in really quite hot temperatures.
Yeah.
Like, could we do this show for an hour at 40 degrees?
No, I completely agree with your point, which is why I was just speaking about the fact that, for example, in hospitals, we need to be talking about why there's no air conditioning in wards when it's 40-degree heat. I do think that there's steps that we can take, but to say that no one should go into work when it's over a certain amount of temperature, what happens to the doctors and nurses and people that are in hospital?
The interesting thing is, in 1976, the Labour government then appointed Dennis Howell as the Minister for Drought. And I mean, it was almost as if he had to perform rain dances to try and I mean, literally, fields were parched. I mean, here, I don't see anybody talking about drought. Yes, there is a heat wave, but we seem to be able to cope with it much better than we did in 1976.
So here's the interesting thing, Ellie. When people talk about, but in the summer of 76, the point is everybody remembers the summer of 76 because it was unique.
Yeah.
We talk about 76, like it was 3 years before I was born, but I remember in my teens and hearing about the summer of 76 because it was unique. It's now not unique. And as you were saying, there's been 3 heat waves this year already. And actually, you say we're not talking about drought. We are. I've got farmers in my constituency, and we are having a pipeline built that essentially will stop water going into the River Meese, which is where farmers abstract water when it's at the right level to be able to water crops. But as we're having drier summers, they can't abstract water. So I've come come up with a bit of an idea for the pipeline. I'll come back when we get a cracking result on that. But we are actually having to think outside the box about how can we make sure we've got enough water to irrigate our crops. We are building, the Labour government is actually building more reservoirs which we haven't had. I don't think there's been a new reservoir built like 30 years or something. Right. So actually you say we're not talking about drought, we absolutely are. Yeah. We need to think long term.
Well, I think that is part of it. We do need to think long termism because, the next couple of years are probably going to be difficult with more heat waves. But we can, probably affect the heat waves that will be in 5 or 6 years if we look at a fundamental reassessment of how we do planning regulations and aircon in new builds, how we can look to install it in, existing buildings, how we can build, at least in the public sector, like TfL buses, for example. We own them as taxpayers. How we can make sure those workers at least aren't burning to death every single day. I think, we need to think about that in 5, 6, 7 years.
Right, we'll move on with some more questions. And I don't know if our panellists have been informed, but we have a fun question at the end, which I give you due warning about during this commercial break, so you can think up your hilarious answers. So you have 10 minutes to prepare. So there's no excuses. They've got to be hilarious. Let's hope we have a hilarious question. It's 8:48.
This is LBC.
So what if the drink's pink and the cream's pink? Chill. It's no big deal. Just get the new Strawberry Candy Floss Frappe from our new McCafe Summer Drinks range. Now at McDonald's. Available until the 7th of September. Price and participation may vary. Frappe is not available on delivery. Subject to availability.
Us kids are mesmerised by the mundane, entranced by the everyday. Where grown-ups see a snail, we see a slippery shelled beast from the undergrowth. But around 1 in 5 young children have a sight condition that can get in the way of all that wonder. The good news is, if these are found early, they can be managed or corrected. So book your child a free eye test at Specsavers today. Find out more at specsavers.co.uk/kids tests.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Chase gives you 2% cash back on your everyday spending.
Every day? Like Monday's train to work?
Yes.
Tuesday's big shop?
Yes again.
Wednesday's coffee treat?
Yes, cash back.
Thursday's lunch, Friday's brunch and Saturday's takeaway?
Yep, and yep.
Super.
Oh, nothing on Sundays.
I take it easy.
Lovely. Enjoy 2% cash back on debit or credit card spending on groceries, restaurants, everyday transport and fuel. Search Chase Bank. 18 plus UK residents. Chase current and saver accounts required. Maximum £20 per month. Eligibility qualification. Exceptions and T's and C's apply.
Shots from halfway causing goalkeeping howlers. Roofs badly leaking from sudden rain showers. Saturday hackers and onion sizzling. These are a few of our favourite things. When you're singing, yet not winning. When your bet's gone bad. We simply remember our favourite things. And then we'll feel so glad.
For all your favourite things, visit BetVictor. 18 plus gambleaware.org. Please gamble responsibly.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
10 to 9. Samantha Niblett is really looking forward to our fun question now. She knows what it is. And I'm relying on her for the best answer from the panel. Ellie Hodges is here, Andy Twelves and Bethany Dawson. Colin in Ipswich says, is Trump's war with Iran turning into another Afghanistan, a war which America will find it very hard to get out of? Now, the US president is currently speaking at a defence summit in Pennsylvania and has yet again claimed that the Iranian regime is desperate to do a deal to end the fighting. Bethany.
I think the reason that America is struggling to come out of this war is because Trump is... I can't pretend that I know anything about what's going on behind the scenes. What I do know is that you kind of know when Donald Trump wakes up because he has tweeted something inflammatory and, he will say they definitely want, I'm not going to do an impression, but they definitely want a deal, and then he'll say, well, they never wanted a deal and they don't work with us, so we're going to close the strait, or we're going to, and so I think in terms of attempting some form of sort of sensible negotiation, his actions on social media have essentially made that incredibly difficult. And I think it made it incredibly difficult for the British government as well to do any make any predictions about what negotiations should look like. So I don't think it's the same, because I think we have a very special character on our hands.
Special. Interesting use of that word. Andy?
Very good. You must have missed it. It's the war is over. It's been finished 32 times. They've won. No, I think it's a forever war in the sense that I think this redefines what the MAGA movement is, post-Trump. He was elected, he was given the nomination in 2015, sort of on the very basis that he moved past that neocon ideal of the Bush era, we're just going to bomb the Middle East. And, in his first term, he did sort of hold to that. But I think he's lost a lot of his core support. And if there was to be a successor to Trump in the MAGA world, whether that's JD Vance or Marco Rubio or whomever, I think he's really, really, really going to struggle with that unique base that he built together on the anti-neocon ideals. I think it's sort of to Bethany's point, like, we actually can't really do anything because the guys that are leading it don't really know what they're doing. So I think it is sort of a forever war.
Samantha?
Well, it's... Thankfully, unlike Afghanistan and Iraq, Prime Minister has kept us out of it. So that's the first thing. I think Trump is probably struggling for allies to support the ongoing engagement.
Well, he is letting American planes take off from British bases, American bases in the UK.
But that is for defence, and also, I know, but also the relationship we have with America is an incredibly important one. And so I actually think one of Keir's incredible successes as a Prime Minister is the fact that he has managed that relationship with the President, who is clearly not an easy character to manage. Will it be... I hate to think that it might go on as long as he is President of the United States, but you can't tell with him. You can't tell. But it's got to end, because we cannot have this instability with fuel prices. We can't have, the risk of life. Lives being at risk. So I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to take. I hope ego won't get in the way of doing the right thing and just letting it calm down and opening the Strait of Hormuz.
Are we talking about Trump and ego, I think? I think that, as Bethany said, there's no real plan from Trump, is there? And there's only so much that we can do. And I actually do agree with Keir Starmer's choice not to take us into the war. I think as a country, when you look at the polls, we do not want to be taken into another war in the Middle East. But Trump is just so unpredictable. It's really hard to actually comment on this, because he can just wake up one day and decide he wants to do something, and onto Truth Social he goes.
OK. Let's move on to a text question from Eliza in Coventry. Some railway stations are going to have taller ticket barriers put in to stop people jumping over them to fare dodge. Surely this country can do better at cracking down on these criminals. Now, a bit of background to this. More than £33 million is being spent to install 6 feet tall barriers at 18 stations across England. It's estimated that £350 to £400 million of ticket revenue is lost to fare dodging each year. It does sound an incredible amount of money for 18 stations, but there we are. Ellie?
Something does need to be done about this, though, and it
deploy Robert Jenrick.
Yeah, deploy Robert Jenrick with his camera crew, and it will be sorted. I do think that this is a really big issue, and it does really frustrate me when I see at my local train station, I'll walk in and I'll go and get my ticket, and then someone will just jump over the barriers.
I've never seen that.
And someone will just jump over the barriers, and then what happens is the security guards don't do anything. Can I say, why have you just let that person? What can you do? Like, can you not stop them? And that's the issue: is we have security guards in these.
You have one job
that aren't doing anything, and they just say, "What can you do?" And I'm like, you can stop them, and that's what's meant to be happening. But when you let people get away with these petty crimes, I am a firm believer in the fact that they will then go on to commit bigger crimes, because it's the same with shoplifting. Once they know that they can get away with it, why would they stop?
I think Samantha.
Well, I didn't know about this, so this is new news to me. I much like Ellie said, it's like the injustice of it, isn't it? Like, train tickets are really expensive. Like, they're not cheap. Although I am glad that we're frozen rail fares, so that was good. But
another achievement
for Keir Starmer. I know, rail fares, but it's clearly not enough, is it? Because you've got people that are trying to jump the barriers, and I have a slightly different take on the stopping people from doing it. Right now, sometimes it's hard to know how people are going to react, but I also hear you. Yeah. I would also like to see people sort of fear doing something naughty.
Yeah,
I would like them to fear doing something naughty. But again, we are putting more community policing on the streets thanks to this Prime Minister. So
I've gone off you now.
It's true. So I'm singing his praises so much, but it is true. There are so many systemic problems that are resulting in people doing things like this. If people felt better off, if they feared the law a little bit more, if they didn't think they could get away with things, then they'd be less likely to try them. So I am grateful that we are cracking down on crime.
Andy?
I think there's a bit of a difference between the kind of TfL bumping that we see, and that's quite often spoke about on social media. And, Robert Jenrick's video was about, I think they were at Greenwich Station, or, other stations are available, of course, but they were, bumping the tube for the £2.30 fare that it is for, Zone 2 to Zone 1. And I think, I can't see it, but I assume this is actually like trains, like train stations rather than tube stations. I think they're two quite different points. I think, is this the government that's spending the money, or is it the operation companies? Because we as the country own some of the train stations, whereas like Great Western Rail will own some of the stations, EMR will own some of the stations. So I'd be quite interested to see the breakdown on the money, to be honest.
Okay, Bethany.
I think the main difference when you look at a sort of TfL station and we talk about enforcement of people just not running through the barriers, which I find infuriating, is that sort of ticket people that work in normal TfL stations do not have the training or the authority to be able to stop someone and physically sort of pull them and say, go and pay your ticket.
What training do you need? You just pull them over.
Yeah. But I do think there is, as we've said, you don't know how somebody's going to react. So I do think there's an element of knowing how to handle somebody and being, I'm so woke. Yeah. It's true. It's not the first time you've said it to me. But I do think, genuinely just in terms of like insurance for the people doing that, they do need to know what they're doing.
Right.
And you see a very different response when police are staffing stations. Maybe we need more community police officers.
No, even more. Okay, this is actually being funded by the Department for Transport. Some of the stations are big ones like Liverpool Lime Street, but there are also smaller, busy ones such as Stevenage.
Well, that's ridiculous, because at Liverpool Lime Street, not to shout them out here, but on the train from London to Liverpool, there isn't even a gate. You can just walk off. It's a free platform, so I assume that's where they're going. So, you've got no gates at the moment, so that'd be a big improvement.
Right. Anna in Manchester has our fun question. If you could suggest one fun thing for Keir Starmer to do in his final few days in office, what would you recommend to him to do in the summer of... No. Ellie.
I was thinking about this, and I think that Larry the Cat has to be involved in this in some way. I think Larry the Cat has become a national treasure. Maybe he could do kind of a Larry the Cat meet and greet. He'd have see if people go to Keir Starmer or Larry the Cat. I think more people will go to Larry the Cat.
That's actually quite sad, because Keir might have become quite attached to Larry the Cat, and they're going to be parted.
Oh. Well, he's got his other little cat, hasn't he?
He's got whiskers.
He has. Andy.
I think it would be quite funny if we are lucky enough to get into the final. He's going across to the US, and it's like a real, quite tight turnaround of finishing the game and then coming back to the UK. I think it'd be quite funny if he went to an after party and then was late and coming back.
For the king.
Just like, oh, cheers. I think that'd be quite a good chat.
Bethany.
Literally anything fun. I think the thing that was quite nice to say is seeing that he has a sense of humour, and it would be nice if he shared a little bit more. Because you speak to people all the time and they say, oh, actually, he's not actually that boring. I think it would be nice to just get a little bit more proof of that. So anything fun.
I can see him on the next series of I'm a Celebrity. Samantha, what was your suggestion?
And one of the ways he could be fun is, that scene in Love Actually when Hugh Grant dances around number 10.
Oh my God, that's a great idea.
He gets compared to Hugh Grant, doesn't he?
Does he?
Are you making that up?
No, I don't know. No. I just want to see the Hugh Grant thing. Dancing, because Hugh Grant can't
in a gimp
dance.
Mask.
Not in a gimp mask. No. But I would like to see him
defensive on me.
Well, I am, because you're belittling my campaign.
No, I'm not. I'm fully supportive of it.
Thank you very much. So I would like to see him recreate the Hugh Grant scene where he's dancing around number 10 and then somebody walks in and he gets all embarrassed.
Right. Well, thank you very much for a very entertaining panel. You've been brilliant. On tomorrow's panel, we have the Popular Conservatism or PopCon Movement Director, Mark Littlewood, the broadcaster, Afro Hagen, the long-time trade union representative, Chris Webb, plus the political commentator, Anita Boateng. Coming up in the next hour, we are going to play you part of a 90-minute interview that I did with Anne Widdecombe back in 2022. I listened back to it over the weekend for obvious reasons, and I just thought she was just brilliant in it. So I thought that's what we do over the next hour. And it's also, the full interview is available on my All Talk podcast at the moment under the title Remembering Anne Widdecombe. She was the subject, of course, of Prime Minister's questions today. Keir Starmer paid a very moving tribute to her, as did Kemi Badenoch. Well, this is going to be our little tribute to Anne Widdecombe, so we can hear what she had to say about her life in this interview from 2022 in just a few moments' time.
on your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, Sir Keir Starmer's told the House of Commons he's proud to leave the country in better shape than he found it. He's been at his final Prime Minister's questions, where he defended his record and insisted he'll give his successor his wholehearted support. Labour MP Samantha Niblett told Iain he leaves a fantastic legacy.
Rebuilding our relationship with Europe, the fact that he's been honoured with the Légion d'honneur in France is just wonderful and testament to his character. The fact that we're lifting 500,000 children out of poverty, waiting lists are dropping with the NHS, all the things that we plan to do in his manifesto.
Kemi Badenoch hit out at Prime Minister-in-Waiting Andy Burnham for failing to show up at PMQs, saying he must answer MPs' questions before recess. The Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, recommended the new Toy Story movie if Sir Keir finds himself with more time on his hands.
Its main character used to be in law enforcement, but was mainly known for being a little wooden, but was replaced by a shiny new action figure from far away who thinks he can fly. And the name Andy on everyone's lips.
Reform UK says a man has been arrested over a social media post allegedly threatening to shoot Nigel Farage. Police say a man in his 20s was detained for sending threatening communications to a Member of Parliament. Following the killing of Anne Widdecombe, former Met Assistant Commissioner Neil Basu says threats to MPs are increasing.
Those people who've got a mic and a platform need to understand the power of that in this day and age. And unfortunately, some of the commentary between politicians, between influencers, some media commentary, all of that does contribute to a very difficult atmosphere for people in public life.
A 14-year-old boy has been charged with a terrorism offence. It's after police discovered an alleged plan to target 2 London mosques. The US has struck Iran's coastal defences and missile sites after reimposing a naval blockade of its ports. Tehran's threatened to shut off more regional energy exports, saying it was in an existential war with America. And 8 men have been charged over historic child sexual exploitation in South Wales. It follows reports of abuse committed against children between the 1980s and 90s. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 13 points at 10,515. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.18. LBC weather. Dry tonight for most with some patchy cloud, lows of 8 to 19. Dry and sunny tomorrow with the chance of a late shower in the southwest. Highs of 13 to 30 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 9 past on LBC. Welcome to the programme if you've just joined us. Now, you will have heard a lot of people talking about Anne Widdecombe over the last few days for obvious reasons. I mean, it's an absolute tragedy that she was killed last week. I did a 2-hour programme on Saturday morning where callers called in to pay tribute to her. We had guests on as well. And I then later that day listened on the way to Literary Festival, an interview that I did with Anne Widdecombe back in 2022 and it's for my Iain Dale All Talk podcast. So I want to play you some of that now, and you can listen to the full thing by downloading the podcast. But I started by asking her whether she regretted being out of Parliament for the tumultuous Brexit years.
I was already falling out of love with it. I would have given it another 4 or 5 years, but I was asked in 2007 if I wanted to stand again, so there would have been 3 years of that Parliament plus 5 of the next. That was 8 years. I knew I didn't want to do 8 years. Well, there were straws in the wind. For example, I'd come to prefer countdown to question time. When I was driving back from the constituency into London, I felt much less excited than when I was going in the opposite direction. There was a time when London excited me tremendously. Parliament itself was changing massively. I was there in the all-night sittings and all the rest of it. It was gradually becoming, not so much as it is now, but it was gradually becoming just sort of ordinary working hours. The collegiate spirit had gone. There wasn't the camaraderie. The quality of MP was already beginning to decline at that stage. And there weren't actually any charms there. And I thought, it's no good getting stale in the job. That's the worst thing you can do. I mean, it's very bad news for your constituents if you get stale in the job. But it's also bad news for you because, you don't perform well. So I thought, no, I was getting... And as I say, I've never, not even for a fleeting millisecond, regretted it.
But that's good, isn't it? Because I think that it's the worst thing. It's quite something to give up being in Parliament. And if there were regrets, it could really eat away at you.
Oh, I think that's quite true. But I had known I was going to give it up. I had said from the beginning of that Parliament, this is almost certainly my last Parliament, I'm going to go at the end of it. I reserved the right to change my mind, but I didn't. I mean, I knew that I was coming to the end. I always used to say, when I lose my sense of outrage, that is when I'm losing my cutting edge. And I did gradually start to lose my sense of outrage because I'd seen it all before. Constituents would come to me with problems that I'd seen 100 times before. And I thought, this isn't good enough. I want to be as outraged as I was when I first encountered these problems. And so, as I say, I knew that it was the right time, and it certainly was.
Was it also because you were not in sync with the Cameron agenda?
I certainly wasn't in sync with the Cameron agenda. I was exactly the sort of Tory that he detested. He didn't want the likes of me around. But I don't think that alone would have caused me to retire.
Describe what your type of Tory is and how your conservatism may have evolved over the years.
Well, some of it, I mean, you talk about how it's evolved. I think most of it has actually been remarkably stable. And that I believe now in most of the things that I believed in, when I first entered upon a political career. But the type of Tory that David Cameron couldn't stand was somebody who was a social conservative, for example, somebody who was to the right of the centre. He looked upon himself as the heir to Blair. Oh, good heavens above, the last thing I wanted was another Blair.
I think it was George Osborne that said that, actually, rather than David Cameron.
Yes, but it describes David Cameron, doesn't it? The heir to Blair.
He did offer you an ambassadorship, though, didn't he?
Yes, he offered me the post of ambassador to the Vatican.
Dream job? Well,
yes and no. When he first offered it to me, I was quite enthusiastic, but then I sort of thought about it. And it meant giving up absolutely everything. Everything, my Express column, absolutely everything, except writing books that they would have allowed. To go away for 3 years to Rome, right away from the scene of any action, which probably was why Cameron wanted me to go, and then to come back to nothing. And I thought, first of all, that's not a very clever thing to do, but there were other reasons. I couldn't imagine myself representing Cameron's views, because, I mean, you're a representative of your government, for goodness sake, representing some of Cameron's views to the Vatican. I thought, I'm not going to be able to do that with any very great conviction, and what's the use of an ambassador if you're not enthusiastic about, the views of your own government? So there was that. There were various other reasons. I didn't really think that the diplomatic lifestyle, which centres around entertaining, that I really wanted that for 3 years. Did I really want that for 3 years? And so in the end I said no, but the driving factor, I was veering between the two the whole time, and I was renovating a house at the time. I actually got somebody to agree to live in the house and supervise the renovations. Now that's how very seriously I took the offer, and I was sort of trying to work it out, but I was veering towards taking it. I was actually veering towards taking it. And
so I can remember you phoned me up at some point during this period, and you said to me, look, I've been offered this, what do you think? And I think I said, oh, you've got to bite their hands off.
As I said, I was veering towards taking it, and then the deciding factor was that I had a detached retina, which OK, that could be dealt with, but then I was going to have A, regular checkups, B, it itself creates then a cataract a year later, and because it's a cataract that's been caused by a detached retina, you don't quite treat it in the same cavalier way that you treat other cataracts. And I thought, no, the last thing I want is to be at any distance from Moorfields. I need to be, and indeed, for a long time, I wouldn't take, say, paid cruises or anything abroad because I wanted to be quite certain that I was near enough to Moorfields to retain my sight, which seemed to me to be the most important thing.
Any regrets about that?
What about retaining my sight? None at all. No.
Honestly. No, because, that was... for somebody who is a staunch Catholic, and I would have thought that was almost a dream job.
There were many aspects of it which would have caused me to give it that description. You're associating with the hierarchy of the church. You've got access to Vatican scholarship. There were lots of things that were in its favour, which is why I was veering towards taking it. Come on, But in the end, there was more against it than there was for it. And as I say, the detached retina was it. That sorted it for me.
I can also remember saying to you before you stood down, are you sure you really want to do this? Because when you don't have the letters MP after your name, you haven't quite got the same selling power for the media, but you've proved me wrong on that.
If you'd asked me, Iain, to predict what would have happened on Strictly, I'd have proved myself wrong, I can tell you. So, no, I was never bothered by that aspect of it. What I actually foresaw for myself, and I was completely wrong on this, I was going to go to Dartmoor, which indeed I've done. I was going to live on Dartmoor. I was going to write books, walk dogs, have a quiet retirement. Then I did Strictly Come Dancing.
I think often in your life, in your media career, you've done something which has effectively guaranteed you another 3 years' work afterwards, and that was certainly one of those things, wasn't it?
It was, but I didn't predict that. And interestingly, nobody who called themselves my friend, nobody wanted me to do it. Absolutely everybody was against it. They said I'd lose my gravitas. That was quite true, but I used to say, what did I want it for? I'd lose my gravitas, I'd make a fool of myself. That was also quite true. I would do this, I would do that. It was all a very bad idea. But I decided to do it. And, of course, it was a decision which then affected all the years since, not just the 3 years, because...
was that part of the reason that you said yes? Because I think this could be the making of me.
No.
Right.
I really didn't think that. I honestly thought... and still don't really know why it didn't happen. I honestly thought that I was going out in the first 2 to 3 weeks. I can't dance for a start. I'm tone deaf. I'm not a beloved comedian. I'm as then Conservative MP. So why would I last? I couldn't see any good reason why I would last. But as a result of lasting on Strictly, I then did the live tour. Craig then asked me to go into pantomime with him. Then somebody from the Royal Opera House casting team was at the pantomime and asked me to go on the Royal Opera House, and it just literally snowballed.
Of all of those sorts of activities, like pantomime, the different reality shows that you've done, which have you enjoyed most?
I've loved making my own documentaries. If you gave me a choice tomorrow morning and you said, Anne, you can do anything you like, I would have said, right, I want to make more documentaries. I've loved making my own documentaries.
Are there any of these shows that you'd quite like to do but haven't done yet?
Well, I certainly, if what's underneath that question is, do I want to do the jungle, the answer's no. And that's not for any moral reasons. It's A, because I've got terrible height phobia. I don't think I'd go over that bridge. That would be the end of that before I even started.
Or jump out of the helicopter.
I certainly wouldn't jump out of a helicopter. Think of my old bones. But the other thing is, I really, honestly... I'm quite happy to lie in a coffin and be covered with snakes, but the idea of having to eat some of those disgusting things is just beyond me. And indeed, I was talking to Stanley Johnson yesterday, who was saying, oh, you should do it. And I said, oh, no, I shouldn't. And I think that's one I shall probably stick to. What would I like to do that I haven't yet done? There aren't any... As I think about it, reality shows at the moment that I'm dying to do. I would have liked to have been chairman of Countdown. I put myself forward every single time, and I've always said, look, if they'd only had me to start with, they'd have had one chairman and not 5. But there we go.
Why do you think they haven't? Because you've been a regular on it, haven't you?
Well, I used to be a regular on it, and they suddenly dropped me like a hot brick, and they've never explained why. My agents tried to find out. I've tried to find out. We've never been told why. But I used to be regularly in Dictionary Corner.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things, you know.
I mean, I know obviously quite a few of their hosts have been, shall we say, not in the first flush of youth, but do you think it has become much more sort of youth, not obsessed, but oriented?
Well, I mean, first of all, contestants have always been from every single age group, so that's never been an issue. Been plenty of young people on Countdown. Secondly, of course, Rachel Riley is hardly an old age pensioner. So I don't really think it was ever, as sometimes it was unfairly portrayed as, an old folks programme. But I don't know. I mean, there's an obsession with youth generally, isn't there? And yet it's the oldies who watch.
Well, that's the thing, particularly programmes like that. I mean, I don't know what the age demographic is of the viewers of that, but I suspect it's probably north of 60, the average.
Well, I think also when it was on at tea time, which it's not now, it had quite an audience.
Well, when's it on now, then?
It's on much earlier in the afternoon. Right. When it used to be on at tea time, I suspect that a lot of the audience was younger kids coming in from school and having a go, encouraged by parents. So I don't think it was ever just an old folks programme.
She would have been a brilliant host of Countdown, wouldn't she? But there we go. We shall never know. We'll play you more from my interview with Anne Widdecombe in just a few moments. It's 18 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. So who's ready for the best summer yet? Unwind in your choice of 4- and 5-star hotels in over 75 destinations like Kos, Lake Garda and Gran Canaria.